Dude.
Howdy.
Hey.
How you guys doing?
Long time no talk.
Yeah, it's been, like 4 or 5 hours?
Yeah. Auryn, are you ready?
I'm good to go, yeah.
All right, take it away.
All right. So I'm sharing my screen now, I think. So yeah, hey ETHDenver, how's it going? Hope you guys are all having a blast. Really excited to be here. My name is Auryn Mcmillan. I'm a product manager at Gnosis and a serial Ethereum tinkerer, big DAO fanboy. Have been in the space for a number of years, mostly playing with DAOs and kind of the associated technologies around them. Today I want to tell you about a project, Clearfund. It's a project that I and a handful of other contributors have been working on in our spare time since ETHDenver last year. We actually kicked it off at ETHDenver last year. As a hack, we made it as finalists, and yeah, we've continued working on it, and yeah, really excited to kind of share where we're at with it and kind of why we're building it. So in short, Clearfund is a permissionless quadratic funding protocol for the Ethereum ecosystem. But before we dive into what that actually means, I guess I just quickly want to highlight the problem. So clearly public goods are good. And just to be clear, when I talk about public goods, I mean those things that benefit the community and are both non-excludable, meaning that anyone can freely use them and no one can be meaningfully prohibited from using them, and non-rivalrous, meaning that the user does not, or the use does not deplete their availability for future use. In the context of Ethereum or the Ethereum ecosystem, that might be things like protocol research, core client software, Geth, Open Ethereum, Nethermind, TurboGeth, languages like Solidity and Viper, developer tooling like Truffle, Hardhat, Typechain, Wallet Connect, some smart contracts like Gnosis Safe, Tornado Cash, Weth, some applications like BrightID, Rotkey, TrueBlocks, and some media like ETHHub and Bankless, and of course, much, much more. The problem is, even though most of these things are pretty universally recognized as good for the ecosystem, they're often drastically underfunded, either due to a lack of funding or to inefficiencies in how funding is allocated. This is where Quadratic Funding shines. One great example that's been an absolute boon for the ecosystem has been Gitcoin's Quadratic Funding rounds. They've been absolutely amazing. They've been really supportive of Clearfund, and they've been really supportive of the entire Ethereum community. They've done an amazing job kind of paving the way. And one way actually is with this. So what the fuck is Quadratic Funding? The folks at Gitcoin actually made up a really awesome website, WTFisQF.com, with a quick explainer video and a cool interactive demo. I'll let you go and explore that on your own time. But the TLDR of that is QF is apparently the mathematically optimal way to allocate funding to public goods. Essentially, anyone can vote on how to allocate the matching funds by contributing to projects that they value. Your vote weight towards a project is the square root of your contribution to it. So this allows you to express not only your opinion, but the strength of your preference by contributing more or less to different recipients. It also then ensures diminishing returns on larger contributions. If you want to dive deeper into the math of why, check out the 2018 paper by Buterin, Heitig, and Weil titled Liberal Radicalism, a Flexible Design for Philanthropic Matching Funds. So why Clearfund? In short, because we believe that protocol level funding should be allocated by a fund allocation protocol. And because most existing fund allocation mechanisms used in the Ethereum space, grants, communities, DAOs, etc., are slow, biased, permissioned, and susceptible to collusion and bribery. So Clearfund is a protocol for efficiently allocating funds to public goods. It strives to be credibly neutral, decentralized, permissionless, trustless, and pseudonymous, while also being resistant to collusion and bribery. That combination is a really, really tough ask, that combination of traits, especially in the context of quadratic funding. So how does Clearfund work? Before we dive into it, it's important to distinguish between the canonical instance of Clearfund and then the protocol or the technology that Clearfund has built. So when I talk about the canonical instance of Clearfund, I mean the instance of Clearfund that's been deployed with the explicit intent of funding Ethereum's public goods and the lofty goals for it that we just talked about. So for instance, or for this instance, we've made some really deliberate design choices intended to make the system less trustful and more permissionless. But anyone can deploy an instance of Clearfund, and we absolutely hope people do. We'd love to see an ecosystem of Clearfund instances start to propagate. So yeah, anyone can deploy an instance of Clearfund to allocate funding to whoever they like. For example, many Ethereum projects have community funds or grants programs that are intended to foster development of their own ecosystem. So these projects could easily spin up a white labeled instance of Clearfund to allow the community to decide how to allocate those funds. We'll get into it later, but this is actually what we've done for the ETHDenver Open track this year. The prizes will be distributed with Quadratic Funding via an ETHDenver branded instance of Clearfund. Again, we're really, really excited to go kind of full circle from being a hackathon project in last year's ETHDenver to now being able to help actually facilitate prize distribution and voting for this year's event. So there's a few kind of components, or a few core components that make up Clearfund, or make up an instance of Clearfund. First is the funding round factory, which is responsible for holding the matching pool funds, defining variables such as round length and native token, which can be any ERC20 token, and then spinning up rounds. MACI, which is the minimal anti-collusion infrastructure. It's a zero knowledge proof based system for collusion resistant voting. And this is where the real magic happens. Essentially, it allows users to contribute to the round, then allocate their funds to recipients in such a way that they cannot prove how they voted to the outside world. So in the case of bribery, the optimal behavior for someone being bribed is actually to accept the bribe and then allocate the funds however they like. Allocate the funds as if they hadn't been bribed, since the briber cannot know how they voted. The third piece is recipient curation, essentially a registry of eligible recipients. So Clearfund is agnostic to how that list is curated or what it looks like. It simply needs to be a contract that conforms to our recipient registry interface. So for the canonical instance of Clearfund, we use a Claros TCR so that eligible projects can be permissionlessly added. However, we've also built a more simple recipient registry where an owner address can add and remove recipients. And the simple registry is what we're using for ETHDenver, just for easier management and because it's a little bit speedier. And then the last piece is Sybil resistance. So Quadratic Funding breaks without Sybil resistance. If users can split their contribution over multiple accounts, they can gain a disproportionate vote weight and disproportionate influence over the outcome of the round. So as such, strong Sybil resistance is really important. Again, Clearfund is agnostic to the method of Sybil resistance. It simply needs a contract that conforms to our registry interface. For the canonical instance of Clearfund, we use BrightID for Sybil resistance. So any BrightID verified user can contribute to the round and vote on how funds should be allocated. However, like the recipient registry, we also have a simple user registry that lets an owner address add and remove users from the registry. Again, for simplicity's sake, this is the option we went for ETHDenver's instance of Clearfund. And it's worth, again, reiterating that Clearfund is agnostic to how the recipient and user registries work. Adapters could easily be created for different TCR mechanisms or different curation mechanisms altogether for the recipient registry. And for the user registry, kind of any of the ever-growing list of proof of uniqueness protocols or identity protocols could easily be adapted to conform to that registry or those registry contracts. So let's quickly go through how a funding round works. Essentially, the owner spins up calls a function on the funding round factory to deploy a new round. The owner is just an address that's been assigned as an owner to the or assigned to be the owner to the funding round factory. In the canonical instance, the owner is currently a multi-sig. In future, we hope to control it with a more permissionless DAO structure. And in the ETHDenver instance, the owner is currently an EOA, just to make management simpler at the cost of it being a little more trustful. I guess it's worth pointing out there that the owner still has kind of limited ability to actually manipulate most things. Essentially, it can just kick off rounds and change some of the variables. Number two, funds are allocated to the matching pool. So any address can add funds to the matching pool at any time by either sending the round's native ERC20 tokens to the funding round factory address, or by approving the funding round factory address to transfer funds from itself. Three, at any point during the round, users on the registry can sign up to contribute to any projects they like. They can also reallocate their funds at any time during the round in case they change their mind on how they want to their funds to be allocated, say in the case of a bribe or simply a new project being added after the fact. Then once the round ends, the quadratic funding results are calculated using ZK Snark magic, which essentially means that most of the inputs are secret, specifically the way that users allocate their funding, but we can produce a proof that verifies the results were computed correctly. And then finally, once the proof's been produced, it's published on chain, and all of the recipients can come and claim their share of the matching pool along with their direct contributions. So if you want to learn more about Clearfund or take it for a spin, we just started an $8,000, or I guess 8,000 XDAI matching round over on XDAI. So you can check it out by heading over to Clr.fund. And Clearfund is built by an open collective of contributors funded by grants and via our own matching rounds. So if you're interested in helping us build Clearfund, you want to use Clearfund for your own project, or just want to join the community, you can find us on Twitter at Clearfund, on our forum at forum.clearfund, and on Telegram at t.me/Clearfund. So with that, we've got a few more minutes, I believe. If not, someone just come and cut me off.
No,
we've got a few more minutes, so I'm going to jump in and try and do a quick live demo, and I'll go and contribute to our latest funding round, just so you guys can kind of see how it works. Let's just make sure that screen sharing is working. Perfect. So yeah, here we are at Clearfund. Essentially, we've got a list of projects here that have all been added via the Claros TCR that I talked about earlier. A couple of projects that you probably know. So what I'm going to do here is just scroll through, pick a few projects, and add them to my cart over on the right-hand side. I'll be fairly indiscriminate about projects for the time being. So don't take it personally if I don't pick your project right now. One thing to note here is that so I can allocate funding right now, but this doesn't mean that I have to necessarily vote for these projects. I talked earlier about being able to reallocate funding. So even though you guys are kind of looking over my shoulder as I do this right now, there's no way for me to actually prove that this ends up being the way that I vote by the time the round ends. I can always reallocate my votes, and I can even do it from a different address, so that you can't kind of follow transactions on my address to make sure that I haven't resubmitted my vote. So I'm going to drop, let's try for 20 DAI into each of these projects. If I wanted to allocate it unevenly, I could. Looks like I don't have enough wrapped XDAI in there for right now. So let's drop this down. Let's add one more project, and I'll just do 10 into each. Hard hat, awesome. So let's do that. And that will make sure I actually have enough to allocate. Great. So I've added all these projects to my cart. I'm going to contribute 60 XDAI to the round. This is a little bit of a painful process. There's a couple of transactions in a row, but it's nothing you probably haven't already interacted with somewhere else in the Ethereum ecosystem. Luckily on XDAI, these transactions are cheap and they confirm really quickly. So here we are just waiting on this second transaction. You'll notice that the matching pool right now says $79. We're still waiting to approve the 8K of additional contributions to the round, additional funding for the matching round. And that was provided via an Ethereum Foundation grant. So we're hoping to continue scaling up the size of the matching pool over the next few rounds with the eventual target of actually moving Clearfund over to an optimistic roll-up and then kind of scaling orders of magnitude on the matching pool. So there we have it. Success. I've contributed to the round. As I said, I can come back at any time before the round ends. We've got a little over 2 weeks before this round ends. So at any point during that time, I can come back, add new projects, and change how much I'm allocating to each project. I cannot change how much I've actually contributed to the round at this point, but I can come back and change how much I allocate to each project. So say I want to bump ETHDenver up and bump Clearfund down a little bit. I can, as long as it still totals up to 60 XDAI or less, since that was my initial contribution, I can kind of shuffle these allocations around as much as I want, either between the projects already in my cart, or I can remove all of those and add new projects and kind of reshuffle.
That's awesome. Thanks
Yeah.
so much, Auryn.
Cheers. So yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in.
We're so happy to have you. Thank you. Everyone found where to find you on Discord, so we'll have people follow up you shortly.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks, guys.